I want to just add, again, there's no punishment. Like, you don't pass and then God is like judging like what you did. God is like a radio station with one song.
Love.
Just love. Freedom.
Love.
Unconditional.
I'd like to welcome to the show, Susan Dyer. How you doing, Susan?
I'm really good, thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm excited to talk to you about your interesting experiences have you had in your life, to say the least.
To say the least, they're really weird. I do know. I actually wanted to say something about that, if you don't care.
Please.
I wanted to tell your viewers that they might not relate to some of my experiences. They might not have ever had something similar happen to them. And therefore, like, what I say could sound really unreasonable or even untrue. And if anyone is feeling that way or does feel that way, I just want them to know, like, that's okay. You know, I do not, like, I don't blame you for feeling that way. If you know, because it sounds, some of my experiences they sound untrue.
Oh, they sound insane. They sound insane, and it's okay. And I've had multiple people on the show.
Yeah, that's for.
Yeah, I've had multiple people on the show. I go, you know what you know, I've had channels and mediums and psychics and near-death experiences. Yeah. So I always tell them, I go, you know what you do is insane. They go, yeah, I know. So it's, it's a very, we're very kind of understanding of
open to process. That.
Yeah. We're having a conversation about this. So,
okay.
So what was for my first question is, what was your life like prior to your near-death experience?
I didn't want to be here. I wanted, if I could have chosen, I would have been dead. I felt that way until my near-death experience, which was at age 40. Before I died that one time, I was born clairvoyant. That is a very rare event. A lot of people, like, this entire channel, a lot of people are awakening now. And the natural and comfortable way to awaken is after you've known yourself for a little bit and you are older and you have the ability to process and handle what may happen. But there are a few of us out there who came in, who were literally born I was born clairvoyant. And what that means, there's a lot of misinformation out there, actually. What clairvoyant means is that, and there's a lot of different ways people see things, but I can see energy. I can see it looks like a sheer neon overlay over everything I'm looking at. And I archangels, deceased Earth personalities, other races of beings. A couple months ago, I was sitting here and Joan of Arc's head popped up like a balloon, like to my left. You know what I mean? Like, I never know who's going to come through. But when I was a kid, I was terrified
course.
I didn't understand anything I was seeing. And when you're a kid, the only resources you have to make sense of yourself are your parents. And for me, a very strict church. And so as a child, like I was seeing, for example, a very deep red. I actually couldn't see through it. And that's very rare. Like there's been a handful of events that have happened to me where in my clairvoyance where like I can't see through it. Like it is the world I'm in that moment. Even though you would still see me sitting in this chair, I would be looking at something like it's flesh and blood and communicating. And so one of these spiritual presences was this like crimson colored opaque thing, and it followed me all the time. And
as a child,
every day. And because of church, I thought this presence was the devil. I had no other way to interpret it. And so that started my, I think therapists call it your core wound, like as a child.
Mm-hmm.
So I would go into my parents' room every night crying, saying, telling my father what I was seeing in my bedroom. It's just like a movie theater. When you turn the lights off, it makes everything just all the more visible. And so at night, there'd be a portal at the head of my bed. There would be beings observing me, standing by my bed. I didn't know this at the time, but like archangels were like, archangels and angels were just everywhere, like, diving around, splashing around, going through walls. And, but I was terrified. And my dad just told me every night, you're not seeing what you're seeing. You have an overactive imagination. Go to bed. And my parents didn't believe me. And the devil was following me. And so I knew I had hid my clairvoyance. I knew to stop talking about it and pretend as if it wasn't true. And by kindergarten, I knew. I mean, it was very obvious. And also because of the reactions I got and because of how I interpreted those reactions, I hated myself by kindergarten. I was like, something is deeply wrong with me. Something's broken. And because of the devil presence, I thought, and somehow
quote unquote devil, quote unquote devil presence,
the quote devil. And I found out later that was Archangel Michael. And a lot of people don't know this. The archangels are totally non-religious. Right. They're just like a blob of divine presence. It has nothing to do with anything at all, no matter what you've done, no matter what you believe, no matter what religion. But that was Archangel Michael, and he was presenting as the traditional root chakra color. We have certain energy, I would say portals. They're actually portals. And you've probably seen the pictures like of the classic 7.
Sure, the chakras.
Mm-hmm. We have so many chakras. Oh my goodness. We wouldn't need to get into that. But Archangel Michael one of the things that, and by the way, they don't have genders either, but it's easier to talk about, So Archangel Michael actually really loves taking care of and watching over extrasensory children.
Mm.
And a lot of people don't know that, and I wish I knew that back then, because, so that was Archangel Michael. But the feeling of hating myself and knowing I was weird and bad continued, and it kind of calcified into I'm not lovable.
Mm.
And I truly felt that way. I felt I had no worth. And I married a man who I knew didn't even like me.
Mm-hmm.
I knew he not even like but I was so down. My self-worth was so damaged by that point. Like, I was like, if I don't marry him, no other man will ever have me, and I'll be alone again. And if you look at the facts of my life, like, they are pretty lonely. And I think a lot of people like me have a difficult time having people understand them. Like, the fact that you are so open to talking about this, I treasure like this conversation. I have like 2 friends.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone else has left. I do understand better now. I talked to my father directly after the near-death experience, and he said something. He said, honestly, you have always scared me.
Mm-hmm. That's a common thing.
His reaction was coming from this fear. And it's a little bit ironic, but he completely is uncomfortable with this, like completely, but he also now completely believes me because I told him things, like sometimes my grandpa will be like, Susan, you need to tell your dad, blah, blah. And I don't know any of it. I don't know what any of it means. Like, he did this a couple months ago with like medical stuff. And I'm like, I don't know what that word means. I don't know if my dad has that. What, and he had me do this whole, my dad now, I've told him, and he's seen me do things and he's seen me say things, and I've said things to him. He knows now it's all true, but it still really scares him. And a lot of people are scared by it. Several of my best friends throughout my life have said, don't you understand that you really freak people out?
Mm.
And I don't, Alex. I died, and when I went up there and I was inside of God, I promised God directly that I would be all in.
All right. So before we get into that, so let's not skim over that. So how did the near-death experience, tell me about your near-death experience.
So the divorce happened, obviously, and my body followed my mind. I crashed. And chronic Lyme disease just raged out of remission.
Mm.
And I was incredibly sick. I had a walker with tennis balls on it. I was like, do we really need the tennis balls? I had a port in my arm and a fanny pack, and I was doing 2 balls of antibiotics in that port a day. My hand and foot, my right hand and foot were paralyzed. I was in excruciating. I I don't know if you guys have, if anyone's ever experienced like central nervous system pain.
Oh, that's not fun. That's not fun.
It makes you feel like an animal.
So when did you pass?
So my friends kept telling me you're about to die. I was like, I'm not. But the one night I knew I was, and I was so happy. You know, I'd been like, I would like leave peanut butter and jelly sandwiches on the floor for my kids and then go back to the couch. I would make them lay down on the floor because like I would have to like army crawl. And one night I was like, oh my God, I am going to die. It is tonight. And I was so quiet and I just laid there and my kids were with their dad. And I just wanted my friends to leave. They wouldn't. They finally did. And I felt elated. And so I started crawling up the stairs to my room. And my guides, I felt like they hit me with a spitball. That's literally what it felt like. And I was like, oh my God, what? And they were like, you have one more chance. You have to get out of your body tonight. That's exactly what they said while I was halfway up the stairs. And they didn't say anything else. But I was like, oh my God. Okay. Because honestly, the thought of my kids being like raised by their father alone without my influence, really, I was like, I know that I signed up to help guide these children. They need the balance of our personalities or they're really going to suffer. So they gave me another chance. They didn't say anything. I climbed the rest of the stairs thinking, okay, I'll try it, but I don't know how to astral travel on command. I'd never done it on command. I've always just like fallen out of my body and gone. And I know how that sounds. But, I've been astral traveling my whole life. Mm-hmm. And it was fun, and I felt safe. And I was like, I loved it. And here I was, and I was like, but how do I do this? And like, so they came right back. When I was like climbing up into my bed, because I was like, you got to tell me. I don't know how, but I'll do it. I'll try. I didn't want to die. I didn't want to die thinking there was anything left. I didn't try.
All right.
I just like, I know myself. And I'm like, I had to know, like, until they said that, I was good. But then they told me how to do it. And by the way, for any of you who try this and perhaps it doesn't work, I want to be really clear. They told me exactly what to do to astral travel on command. But I want to tell you, I've never been able to do it again. So please don't feel discouraged or like maybe you are not connected enough, because you are. We are innately connected. And I learned that very intimately when I died. I laid along the edge of the bed. That's what they said to do. Lay literally on the edge. And there's a tipping point when we're trying to sleep. It's like right in the middle. And I think the technical word for it is hypnagogic. it's like when you're half asleep and you're half not asleep. That's, I guess, the easiest way to put it. And in that moment, they told me to roll off the bed. And that's what I did. I was terrified. I was like, well, like, what then? Like, well, I'm just gonna be sitting here like, okay, I'm still gonna die. I can't, I just want to make that very clear. I was terrified, really. I don't know if I've ever been that scared. I had no idea what to do. But my higher self, you know, I'm Susan Dyer and you're Alex, but 99% of us is anchored in dimensions that we can't even see or feel.
Our higher selves.
Yeah, exactly. And you cannot be disconnected because we're one.
Correct.
And so even if you feel like I'm alone, I'm not getting any messages, I don't know what to do, just remember you're always connected. It's just your emotions, you know, just emotions. It's never fact. So when I rolled out of my bed, and this is weird, it made me understand all those portals that would show up by my head when I was little. And they were different color. They're different color portals. And they scared the hell out of me. I didn't realize I was making them to go places. I thought weird creatures were going to come in.
Or imagination. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like, so when I got out of my body, there, boom, there was the portal. But I was like, wait a second, this is like black-gray. This is a black-gray portal. It looks like shit. Like it looked like a tunnel, actually. When I would do the portals, they would just look like a circle in the wall that you could go through. Mm-hmm. But this one looked like a pipe. And it was like charcoal gray and black. And I was like, what is that? That looks terrible. I don't want to go in that. Like literally, I was like, oh my God, where's that thing going to take me? It looks like it's like from a friggin' horror show. Mm-hmm. But I knew, I was like, okay. And so it was going so fast. I had no idea what it was or where it was going, but I obviously know, okay, I'm supposed to go into this charcoal thing. And I had to like kind of angle my what's it called? Myself when I'm out of my body. What the hell is that called?
The astral.
Thank
form.
you. My astral body. Mm-hmm. I had to angle my astral body into this tube. Mm-hmm. And so I did. And I was like, yeah, no music, no lights, no other being. I'm like, this is not cool. Like what? And then boom, I was in a place called, a lot of people call it the void.
Right.
And at that point, my biggest fear in life was the dark because of all the things I've seen, you know? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so to end up in the void, which is like black, wet velvet, no sound, no noise, no other beings, and eternal, infinite. I couldn't even explain to you how afraid I was. But I do want to state, because this is important to me, that void is essentially like God, if you want to call that energy God. That void is the feminine, receptive womb aspect of God energy. And you could kind of consider that space like the next canvas God's going to paint. It literally is like the womb space for whatever is next created. But I didn't know that then. So I just said, I closed my astral eyes, so weird, and I said, God, please take me somewhere safe and good. And before, this is the thing, I'm sure you guys have all heard this, there's no time in other dimensions. And there's not. So there's no time. There's thought. And before, like, I'm still kind of like used to these human habits. So before I could even finish thinking my thought, immediately, instantaneously, no time passing at all, I was in the void, and then I was in the masculine energy of God, which presented like blazing rays of light. And I used to think, I don't adhere to any organized religion. But that my job is literally like, I love God. I do if I could be like, a nun that could still have like a partner with no organized religion, I would do it. Everything I do, if I could have one legacy, it would be to tell people like, there's nothing to fear. There is nothing to fear. God is God. I was in those rays. I thought God was really vague before. Like, God is the energy that makes things. And that's incorrect. My experience showed that God knew me better than my best friend. We had this exchange without speaking, just by thought. God, and this is like what people don't like to hear, and this is what they don't even like let me publish, actually. But I realized when I was like kind of like a tea bag floating like in those rays and having this exchange with God, I realized, and this is gonna maybe sound weird, but it's okay.
I mean, we've gone past weird a while ago, so go ahead.
Yeah, that's right. That's so true.
Yeah.
I realized that I was God. I realized, like, I'm not God's child. Jesus wasn't God's son. I realized it was like I was a two-pronged plug plugging into the outlet.
But this is a concept that's been talked about for millennia in ancient texts and things like that, that we are all God. We are all one. We are all connected to source. We are not apart from source.
Yeah. Right.
So when you say that, I completely understand it. And you're not the first to say something like that. And it's not outlandish if you study ancient spiritual texts and any field, any either organized religions, but even specifically more philosophies and spirituality over the years, even Hinduism and Jainism, and you start going deeper and deeper, older, Sumerians. I mean, you're talking about one with one with source.
I always say capital O, one.
Correct. Exactly. So that's not to me, at least, it's not an outlandish statement because it's been said by spiritual teachers throughout history.
I think a lot of people who resonate with the Bible find that statement almost like that
blasphemy.
my son said heresy.
Heresy, blasphemy, absolutely.
Right. And then this is the thought I had immediately following that, which I'm interested in what you have to say, because this is the one that gets even. I have one video on YouTube, and the title is "There Is No Sin," and I think it's like maybe one of my most popular videos. I've had to erase almost every comment, because every comment's basically telling me like that I'm an evil witch going to hell. But I thought word for word, after this thing, still being in God, I thought word for word, I could have just murdered 10 people right now.
Mm-hmm.
That was the thought. But like, to continue that thought, it was like, when I came to it and I wrote for like a week, like, God is God, period. Mm-hmm. Like, if there's a big tree, the tree is not going to roll up its branches if Jeffrey Dahmer walks under it. Just like if Mother Teresa walks under the tree's not going to like fluff up even more to like shade her.
Well, listen, I mean, to kind of get my point of view of what you're saying across. Yeah. I understand what you're saying. If you go into the spiritual texts of any philosophy that understands or believes in reincarnation, then all people who do it's action, reaction, it's karma. So if you do something bad here, you will pay for it down the line, but not in a way that we understand it as like punishment. No, it's the soul is trying to evolve. So it itself chooses to go down the path to be tested in certain ways. And if it did something that was hurt or was negative towards someone else, they will feel that in another life. And people who do it at a large scale will feel it at a large scale throughout multiple lifetimes. Again, this is basic concepts of reincarnation and karma. It's difficult for certain organized religions to understand that. It is just a belief system that has been around longer than most other, belief systems in humanity. Talking about Hinduism, Jainism, even older things in the East. It's mostly Eastern philosophies, Eastern, religions and thoughts and beliefs is what we're talking about here. But I understand what you mean that there is no sin. Quote unquote, there is no sin. But if you do something here to hurt you, you will feel it. And that's what, and did you have a life review, by the way, or no?
No, I just had this exchange with God. And what you're saying, like, I want to just add, again, there's no punishment. Like, you don't pass, and then God is like judging like what you did. God is like a radio station with one song.
Love.
Just love. Freedom.
Love.
Unconditional. Just like, it's like if you like cut through a brick, they're just brick. God's just God. There's no reaction, nothing. But at the same time, because we are God, God knows us inside and out. Mm-hmm. And you're right. Like, if we do something, it's our reaction. It's our decision. If we look back at how we spent our life and we're like, and we want to
fix that. And
it is not like a panel. There's no system. There's no like, judge and gavel. It is all just personal growth. Well, no fear, like no death, There's no punishment. You don't go somewhere if you do something. Like, it's nothing.
Well,
dying is the funnest thing I've ever done.
Well, the one thing that I've talked to so many near-death experiencers, and when the life review does come up, it is really interesting because you're able to experience both your side of the interaction and the other person's side of the interaction. So if you hurt someone, you feel it.
You get to actually,
and you feel. So then it's a teaching mechanism because why we're here is to learn, to grow. It's a school.
Yes, this is Earth School.
No question about it. And as you continue to grow, from my understanding, talking to spiritual masters, talking to near-death experiencers and other people who've studied this, it is the choice of the soul whether they want to reincarnate again or not after this life. And if they do reincarnate, they go, well, I did that thing to that person. I got to feel what that's like. I got to go through this. And because it's kind of like, and I use this analogy, a video game. You've got to go through a tough level in order to level up to be able to continue playing the game.
For sure. That's why we come here. We're ballers.
We're trying to level up our evolution, and that's what ascended masters have done. People like Jesus, people like Buddha, people like Yogananda, Babaji, and you can start talking about all the Saint Germain. So many different ascended masters over the course of history. They've all leveled up to a point where they're like, I don't need to play the game anymore, and I've chosen to stay behind the scenes and help along the way because I've heard
part of them will go back down just simply to help. Do you know what I mean?
Right, exactly. And that's what, again, from my experiences and from my talking to so many people over the course of this show and just my own studies in philosophies and belief systems around the world, because I try, look, all belief systems have a core, every single one. There's a God, and generally we're souls. That is a general idea by almost every major religion on the planet. Those two concepts. And then there's like do good to others and then do good things and these kind of things. But then it starts getting muddy with the laws and the this and the fear and all this stuff. Because it all depends on the belief system you're working with. Yeah. And if you believe in one thing, that's fine. And if that gets you closer to God on this run, go for it. I know wonderful Christians. I know wonderful Muslims. I know wonderful Hindus. It's
most people don't actually. Mm-hmm. I challenge everyone. Like, this is a thing. If I didn't have this experience, like, it's almost like religion and sometimes or politics. Like, it's just like inherited. Like,
no, you're taught this.
I'm this. So, and like, when I got married and the pre-canon, whatever that means, priest was like, I want you all to now promise that you will raise your children in this religion. And he got to me, he hated me, big stride. I was like, no. I was like, why? I don't care if they're Wiccan. I don't care. They're going to do what I want them to find their path.
Well, that's a change. But that's a change.
So many people who don't question themselves that they may not align with certain things. But a lot of adults would rather just kind of
go with the flow. But you have to also give credit to what's happening right now. There's a massive awakening happening where people are leaving organized religions by the boatload and looking for answers, looking for their own spirituality, looking for their own connection with God without the fear and the dogma and the things like that that's been around forever. And again, if that works for you and gets you closer to God,
if it works genuinely,
then go with God. Go with God, but you can't, and this is the thing, you can't really force your ideas, and this is very difficult, force your ideas along, because if you think about it, and this is something I thought about when I was a kid, I was born Catholic. I was born in a Catholic family. So years later, when I started to do some critical thinking, I go, if I would have been born to Hindus, I would have been a Hindu. If I would have been born Muslim, I would have been Muslim. If I would have been born in a Jewish family, I would have been Jewish. Mm-hmm. So I was like, so my religion and my belief system is basically what I learned from my parents.
Yeah.
They're not inherently right or wrong. There's just it's the same reason why you might eat a certain dish that I would find revolting, because it wasn't what I grew up with. But in other cultures, they could eat that. And so it's all about, if you were born in the middle of the jungle and the only thing you learned was like the moon and the stars are God, well, then that's what you know. So it's all relative to what you believe. So, but I think now there's such awakenings happening that there's so much more conversations like this. There's more people looking to shows like this to find answers that they're desperately looking for.
Yeah.
But they're looking for them now. There's things happening now in today's world that would have never happened 20 years ago, 10 years ago, and older. This conversation was never happened. You were Catholic, you're Catholic. You're Jewish, you're Jewish. You're Hindu, you're Hindu. That's not a conversation. But now the younger generation is saying things like you, why? That doesn't make sense to me. Why can't I study other philosophies, other religions? Why can't I find something that makes sense to me,
right,
on a soul level? And that's, I think, where we're going.
I mean, we're talking. When I came back from that experience, there's a lot more that happened, but I had to come out.
All right. So before we get, because I always love asking that question. What else happened in the near-death experience? You're there.
Okay.
You're in with the God energy.
God, and first thing God asked you, he was like, do you want to stay? Meaning with me, do you want to stay, or do you want to go back home? Mm-hmm. Whoa, so weird.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, that was really weird. Okay. So right away I manifested a huge IMAX sized photo of my two boys. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I want to stay. And I wanted to really show God that I meant it. And so I started pulling on my silver cord.
Yeah.
We have so many energy lines through us.
I've heard of that before.
We do have an etheric cord. Mm-hmm. And so I just started going hand over hand. And I was thinking, oh my God, where am I? How long is this going to take? If I actually just keep doing that, this could be years. I don't know, where, but anyway, God believed me. And we had all of this, nothing was spoken. God, I promised God the word I said or thought, whatever. So I said, word I said, I promise I will live transparently. I mean, even when I'm saying it, I'm like, oh my God, it's my worst fear come true. I mean, I've been hiding this my whole life. I've been feeling fraudulent and broken my whole life. Mm-hmm. I live in Washington, D.C., where people wear Lululemon pajamas. You know what I'm saying? The people I went to school with, they're all doctors, lawyers. They're on the front page of the papers. And I've just directly promised God to speak openly about everything I never say and was going to take to the grave. Mm. And I knew intuitively that transparency was to the end of helping other women find themselves, in if they're starting their weight, like that's, so that I said, when I woke up, I was like, I don't know what you want me to do, God. You're going to have to tell me, but I'll do it. But so that's what I do now with that transparency. I mean, I talk about everything absolutely truthfully. And I still feel so like, what's going to happen? I mean, because I know how it sounds, but I'm well educated, very cultured. I've been around the world. Like, I have like a very high IQ. But I have to say these things that literally make me sound like I should be in a mental hospital to the end of comforting and inspiring other women in particular. And so I made that promise to God. And I knew what that meant really. And then all of a sudden, Jesus, I went from God to Jesus. And I have had a really hard time with my church. Like I've had some bad experiences with my priest. And I really never, like all those years of Sunday school, I would get arguments with them all times.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, and my confirmation interview ended up being like a mafia like showdown. It's just like it's just like terrible. Like I
understand.
Kidnapped by a fundamentalist Christian horse wrangler. It's just, you can't make this stuff up. It's so weird. So Jesus was there, and I was like, what? Like I was like, Jesus. And the thing that really messed me up was that he looked like the Jesus of like rich white people. Like he had like light brown, beautiful hair, like a very like well-trimmed beard, and like gorgeous blue eyes, and like a perfectly like cream colored robe with a tie. And that for a second, I was like, what? Like, okay, we know Jesus didn't have blue eyes. I'm sure he had like dark hair. I'm sure he had like dark skin.
Sure.
This guy looked, I mean, that I was like, I was like, Jesus. I'm like, what? I'm like, what are you like? Why you? And why do you have to look like that? And that's also what I want to say is that if Jesus had come to me in that moment looking like how he really did during that lifetime, I would have been unsure of who he was.
Correct.
For longer.
Correct.
So he presented himself in the stereotypical Christmas card Jesus.
That's what I've heard before.
I'm like, oh my God. But I was really confused because every time I went to church, if I saw like the beach, like they always have like Jesus like hammered up on the cross.
I know.
And the bloodier and like, the bloodier and the more thorns, like the more blood and like the more I can't like deal with it. I'm just like, oh my, this is so crazy. What are we doing?
So Jesus shows up.
And he goes, and he puts his both palms out like this. Can you see?
Yeah.
And he goes, he was ignoring my like freak out. And he put his palms out and he said, do you want to get well? No, I'm sorry. He said, do you want to get better? And I was like, oh my God, yes, I want to get better. And I grabbed his hand and I started shouting over and over, I'm going to get better as fast as I can. I was shouting, screaming. I mean, not really, but
your thoughts.
But thoughtfully, over and over and over. I was just saying that. And I grabbed Jesus's hand and we flew through. It's like, just imagine the room you're in now and imagine that room like was nothing but every single shade of green that you could ever imagine. Just glorious. Just like makes you want to cry. You know, like you're flying through this divine kaleidoscope of green. And green traditionally, and I say traditionally because there are so many people with different energy makeups. Like my root chakra is a metallic color.
Sure. So what is green?
Green traditionally is the heart chakra and Archangel Raphael. And traditionally, Archangel Raphael is the healer, and presents, usually for people who see this way, presents as the color green. So during this flight, I read like this was the healing.
But Susan, can you tell people where they can find you and the work that you're doing?
Totally. So you can go to my website, susandyer.com, and that's Dyer is D as in dog, Y-E-R. Or you can find me on YouTube, Susan Dyer 1111. I have a huge women's Facebook group called Divining Women. And then I am on Patreon just by my name. So I offer mentorships, which are pretty intense, that are long. And we go through each chakra month by month. And I also offer just, like one-off sessions for anyone who has something going on. And those sessions are usually just like 1 hour. And then on Patreon, you can I teach classes.
Sure.
Like my patrons tell me, they're like, okay, we want to channel this person this class, or we want to deepen our clairvoyance this class. Like I basically take it from my students. Like, would you want to channel someone and you can ask them questions, or is there a lesson or a practice or technique I can help you with? And I do that on Patreon.
Suzanne, thank you so much for your story and for sharing everything you did with us today. And thank you for all the stuff that you're doing to help other people and women throughout their journey in life. So I appreciate you, my dear. Thank you again for being on the show.
Thanks, Hobbs. I love what you're doing too.
Thanks for watching. Click on one of the videos below to continue your journey, and don't forget to subscribe.